Welcome to Unit 3. This unit is called News and Views. So I want to ask you, do you like to know the news? Do you read them in the newspaper, on social media? What is the most trusted source for you to get your news from? Now let's check this unit together step by step. So first, we have this exercise. You're going to match the tense names with the verbs in the sentences. So I will give you 10 seconds to think, and then we're going to do it together. So we have here Ellen and George were driving home. Ellen and George were driving home. So which tense is this? Yes, it's in the past. Past continuous, very good. They'd been on holiday. They'd been on holiday, so this means that they had been on holiday. So this is the past perfect. Yes, very good. The past perfect simple. They had been driving for hours. So again, it's past perfect, but since we have ing, so it's going to be the continuous. Very good. They crashed the car. This one is easy. This is past simple. Fortunately, they weren't injured. Fortunately, they weren't injured. So this is past simple, but is this active or passive? Very good. This is passive. Excellent job. So that was a good refreshing for the tenses in our mind. Now let's go to a small reading we have. So now let's move to this small reading. We have this picture here, and we have the title, Man Survives 60 Days Stuck in Snow. So I want you to tell me, do you think that this is true? Is it really possible? I'm sure you have a lot of questions now in your mind. So try to make some questions that you would like to know from this article, and then we're going to read the article together. Now I will show you the article so you can read it and let me know if you found any answers to your questions that you just made. After you finished reading, now let's listen to some questions and compare them with the questions that you just made.
Unit 3, Tape Script 3.1. 1.
Who was the man?
A 44-year-old Swedish man called Peter Skillberg.
2.
Who found him?
A worker who was clearing the road.
3.
Where was he when the accident happened?
In northern Sweden, near the town of Umeå.
4.
When was he found?
Last Friday.
5.
How did the accident happen?
He'd been driving on a forest road when he was caught in a snowstorm and he got stuck in snowdrifts.
6.
How did he survive?
By eating snow and keeping warm in a sleeping bag.
7.
How is he now?
He's recovering from hypothermia in hospital.
8.
What was the temperature?
Minus 30 degrees Celsius.
9.
Why wasn't he found for 60 days?
Because the road where he'd been driving was so remote.
All right, could you write notes of the questions made? Okay, make sure that you write them down. Now let's take a look at the next exercise. We have here this listening to two people discussing the article, all right? And we're going to listen and complete their conversation. This one we're going to do together. So let's listen and then complete, and then we will check together.
Tape Script 3.2.
This is amazing.
What is?
Well,
It says here that a 44-year-old man in Sweden was buried in snow for 60 days and he survived.
60 days? I don't believe it. Was he buried by an avalanche or something while he was skiing?
No, he hadn't been skiing. He was driving his car and it was snowing hard and he got stuck in snowdrifts.
But 60 days is over 2 months. How come nobody found him?
Well, apparently he was on a remote road and his car was completely covered in snow.
Like an igloo?
Yeah.
So was he sitting in his car all that time?
No, not sitting, lying. Fortunately, he'd brought a sleeping bag and when they found him, he was lying in that.
Very fortunate. Why didn't anyone report him missing?
I don't know, it doesn't say.
I'm not sure this story's true. Did he have stuff to eat?
No, he said he'd eaten nothing but snow. He was really thin when they found him, emaciated, it says here, and he had hypothermia.
I'm not surprised. I just don't believe it's possible to live without food for 60 days, and it's strange that nobody missed him. I think there's more to this story than meets the eye.
All right, let's check the answers together. I'll give you a second to write or finish writing your notes. And then we start. Now let's do it together step by step. So we have number 1 here. Did you get it? Yes. Was he buried? Okay, by an avalanche. Was he buried? Okay. While he was skiing. Excellent job. No, he hadn't been skiing. Yes, excellent. He hadn't been skiing. He, number 3, he was driving. He was driving his car and he got stuck. He got stuck. Yes, he got stuck. Excellent job. In snowdrifts. You remember the meaning of snowdrifts? Very good. How come nobody found him? Yes. Number 5. He'd bought. Very good. It's not he bought. He'd bought a sleeping bag and he was lying in that. So yes, he'd bought a sleeping bag and he was lying in that. I know it's a little bit difficult to hear he'd bought. I mean, you most probably heard it he bought. So let's try to listen to it again if you didn't catch it from the first time. Number 6, why didn't anyone report him missing? Very good. Why didn't anyone report him missing? Number 7, he said he'd eaten. Very good. He'd eaten nothing but snow. Number 8, I think there is more to this story than meets the eye. Very good. That's a very good expression, right? More than it meets the eye. Now let's go to the next exercise. Now let's listen to this exercise together and we try to match a line in A with a line in B.
Tape script 3.3. 1.
He disappeared 10 months ago.
2.
He'd been living in the forest since May.
3.
The car looked like an igloo.
4.
He'd fallen out with his family.
5.
They hadn't been trying to find him.
6.
He wasn't discovered until February.
All right, let's try to solve it together. Let's do it step by step. Number 1, he disappeared 10 months ago. Yes. He'd been living in the forest since May. All right. Uh-oh. Yes, here it is. Number 3, the car looked like an igloo. Yes, the car looked like an igloo. Do you know the meaning of the word igloo? They are like the small houses that are made from snow. You can find a picture for it. It's really nice. Number 4, he'd fallen out with his family. Yes. Do you know the meaning of falling out with someone? Falling out with someone, it means they are no longer talking, like they had a fight or an argument and they are no longer talking. So you can say, I fell out with my friend years ago. Number 5, they hadn't been trying to find him. And he wasn't discovered until February. Excellent job. You're doing really great so far. Let's keep going. We have a language focus exercise here. So we need to know what are the different tenses used in these 2 paragraphs. Why are they used and which paragraph sounds more like the beginning of a story? So we have number 1, Peter drove into the forest. It started snowing. His car became stuck in a drift. He sat and watched the falling snow. Number 2, Peter was sitting in his car watching the falling snow. It had started to snow soon after he'd driven into the forest, and now his car had become stuck in a drift. So if you look at it, you will find that this one here, we have the past simple tense, right? So this is like to describe a series of events that happened in the past, one after the other. But in the second paragraph, the past simple tense isn't used, but the tenses we have is the past continuous to describe an activity that is in progress during that time in the past, and the past perfect tense, which is used to refer back to events that happened before that time. So which paragraph would you feel that this is the beginning of the story? Yes, it's in the second paragraph. Very good. So we have this is the past continuous and this is the past perfect. Very nice. So now I want you to read these sentences here and to try to compare them. What are the tenses of them? So I read a book on the plane. I was reading a book on the plane. So I read a book on the plane. It's what? Past simple. Very good. That's why we said read, not read, because it's in the past. So if it's in the present simple, for example, I would say I read a book every day. If I put it in the past, so I read a book last night, for example, and the same spelling but different pronunciation. So I read a book on the plane. So this is past simple, a completed action in the past. But I was reading. So this means that I haven't finished reading this book till now. The book isn't finished. Let's check another example together. The film started when we got to the cinema. The film had started when we got to the cinema. So what is the difference here? So if I said the film started, it means that it's a completed action and the next action soon after our arrival. And the film had started, so it means that the film started before we arrived. Very good. Number 4, he was sacked because he had stolen some money, or he was sacked because he had been stealing money for years. First, what's the meaning of sack? If you can check your dictionary. One of the meanings of sacked, it's like when someone is removed from their jobs. Like, for example, they give him the sack for being late. Now, what's the difference between these 2 sentences here? So we have, he had stolen some money. This is past perfect simple, very good. And it's an action that happened before another action in the past, like a theft resulted in him being sacked. But in he had been stealing money for years, this is the past perfect continuous, had been stealing money. So this is past perfect continuous for a repeated action that happened in the past before another action. Okay, so it's a series of thefts that resulted in him being sacked. So because it was continuing. Now let's check number 5. When I got to the garage, my car was being repaired, had been repaired. So in the first one, this is past continuous. but it's passive for a process that is ongoing in the past. So this means that the repairing isn't finished. But in the second one, had been repaired, it means it's past perfect passive for a process that has been finished before another action in the past, right? So this one, it's continuous, and this one, it's finished. However, both of them are passive. Now let's take a look at this exercise together. This one just needs like a cup of coffee or something to drink. So if you can try to take a break and go and get yourself something to drink, because this one needs special attention. Now we're going to rewrite the sentences as a one sentence, beginning with the line in bold. For example, we have here, he wasn't always poor. He had a successful business. Unfortunately, it went bust. Mike was a homeless beggar. So we're going to start with Mike was a homeless beggar, but he hadn't always been poor as he'd had a successful business, which unfortunately had gone bust. So I will give you like a couple of minutes to think of this exercise, and then we're going to do it together. So pause this video, think about the sentences, and let's compare our answers together. I hope you paused the video and you are ready by now. So let's do it together, all right? So let's read number 1. He got up at dawn. He was driving for 10 hours. Peter was tired when he arrived home. So we're going to start with this sentence. Peter was tired when he arrived home because he'd got up at dawn and had been driving for 10 hours. Yes, that's very good, because had been driving for 10 hours, we're going to make it in had been driving for 10 hours to show that, like it was continuous at that time. Now let's go to the second sentence. I parked my car on a yellow line. It was towed away. I went to get my car, but it wasn't there. So we're going to start with the sentence in bold, and we start with when. So we can say, when I went to get my car, it wasn't there because I'd parked it on a yellow line. Like I had parked it on a yellow line and it had been towed away. Number 3, she won 2,000 in a competition. Last night, Sally was celebrating. So I will say last night, Sally was celebrating because she had won 2,000 in a competition. You got the idea now, the pattern? Now let's go to number 4. They were shopping all day. They spent all their money on clothes. Jane and Peter arrived home. They were broke. We want to start with when, and Jane and Peter arrived home. So we will say, when Jane and Peter arrived home, they were broke because they had been shopping all day and they had spent all their money on clothes. Now let's go to number 5, the last one. He saw a house in Scotland. He first saw it while he was driving on holiday. Last week, John moved to the house. So I will say last week, John moved to the house which he had first seen in Scotland while he had been driving on holiday. Very good. Now listen to these sentences more than once and write them down in your notebook and get ready for the next exercise.